So Module 3 talks about business letters, and I want to just go over some of the parts, well, all the parts of the business letter, and just some guidance on setting up the business letter. First of all, you need to have a letterhead, and whether you have a company that will have pre-printed letterheads that you just put in your printer, or if you need to create one, you need to have a letterhead at the top for business letters. I'm just going to copy over a letterhead that I have here. We're just going to copy that and paste it at the top of our letter. So we have our letterhead. So the next thing you need to have is the date. So if you want to insert the current date, if you go to Insert and come over to Date and Time, and you get some options. For business letters, it's always the month spelled out with the day and the year. So we'll click on that, and if we click Update Automatically, that means that it will automatically update every time you open this file. Now, you may or may not want to do that. Probably most often with a business letter, you want to leave the date as it is and not have it be volatile. You want it to be to stay as it is. So we're going to click on OK and not update it automatically. And also, there should be just a little bit more space after the date. So if I press my Enter key, that really is a little bit too much space. So one way I can fix this is by going to my Home tab and going under my line and paragraph spacing and come down to Remove Space After Paragraph. So you see what happens when I do that. It closes it up a little bit. It's not changing my paragraph marks or anything. It's just closing it up a little bit. So that's the other thing I wanted to point out, is that I have my Show Hide button on, and if you turn it off, you can see that all those marks are gone now, the hidden characters. But I always work with it on. I just find that it's very helpful when I'm trying to set things up and trying to check my spacing to have those turned on. So the other thing I wanted to point out in this particular letter is when I click in this area, the style is set for no spacing, which means that when I press Enter at the end of each line, it's going to directly wrap around immediately underneath the line with no spacing. Now if we look at, I just have another document, so I'm going to delete this. I don't want that on there right now. So if I am under the normal template, which is what the default for Word is, and I type in and then I press Enter and I put in an address, notice what is happening. I have space in between my lines, oops, even though I only pressed Enter one time. Okay, this is the default spacing in Word. So here's another option. If you forget to go up and put no spacing as a style, and maybe you don't want no spacing, maybe for your paragraphs you want that little bit of extra spacing in between. If I select this and I go under my line and paragraph spacing and I do Remove Space After Paragraph, just like I did with the date, then it pulls it all together. And so now I have it all together as it should be. The other option is if you, at the end of the line, instead of pressing Enter, hold down Shift and Enter. Oops, it popped up there because I don't know why it popped up there. Shift and Enter, and then type in, you'll see that it is, whoops, sorry, following suit there. All right, so if you do Shift and Enter, then it will automatically wrap around as well. So those are other ways you can get it, but your address should look like this. It should not have extra space within it. So I'm going to go back to my letter now. As far as the inside address goes, obviously it's who it's going to. This person's title is underneath because it's a long title. I've often have students ask me, well, can I put a title beside the name? Yes, if it's not very long. Something like a one-word title like manager coordinator. All right, those would be fine to put beside a name, but something like this that has more than one word really should be placed underneath the name. So when you have the salutation, things that you want to check, this is the salutation, sorry, or the greeting it's referred to. You want to make sure that, first of all, you're addressing it to the right person and it's spelled correctly. So you want to make sure that the name is spelled correctly in both places. If, for instance, let's just say, for example, we did not know what this person's name was, we're just writing a letter to the Director of Human Resources, what I tell students is, first, if you can get online and maybe do a little research at this Dunbar and Gaines Insurance and see what the name of the person is for the Director of Human Resources, that would be good. Or you can even call and say, you know, I'm addressing a letter to the Director of Human Resources. Can you please, you know, tell me who that person is so I can address the letter? It's always better to go with a personal name than a title, but if you can't find it, then what you would simply do is you would say, Dear Director of Human Resources. All right, it's because we do not know if that is a male or a female. So you want to have it addressed neutrally. So that's what you would do. Followed by a colon. This is the most common practice with letters. You have a colon after this greeting. There is just one space before or after it before you start your first paragraph in the body of the letter. Letters are single spaced with a blank space in between. And then, of course, these are bulleted items. They would be single space. And then finally, after your last body paragraph, you would have your closing. Sincerely is the most common. Cordially is common. Respectfully is used if you're asking for something generally. You would use the word respectfully. But then you always have extra space here after your closing and the person's name who is sending the letter for room for the signature, and that's why it is there. So room for a signature, the person's name again, title below the name unless it's very short, followed by your reference initials. Okay, and the style of this letter is what's called a block style. Everything is at the left margin. These are indented because they're bulleted points, but your date, your inside address, your greeting, your closing, all of this starts at the left margin. So there is another style of letter that starts with it. It's called modified block, where the date is actually at the center and the closing is at the center of the page. All right, so this is a 6.5 inch line. I can tell that because here's 6 and that is a half. So the midway point here would be about 3.25. So I can just guess and put a tab right here, but I want to show you. Right now I have my ruler displayed. If I go under view is where it is and I click on the ruler, that will take it off. I can just click on it again to put it back. But a shortcut to setting tabs is over here when you have the ruler displayed, you have these little icons for a left tab. There's a center tab, a right tab, a decimal tab, a bar tab, which actually puts a bar straight down vertically between the items that you're tabbing. This would be your first line indent, and this would be your hanging indent. And then we're back to the left tab. So you can go up and set tabs on the line. So if I select this and I go up here to 3.25, and sometimes it's a little bit particular about where you're placing the, there it is, your insertion point or your arrow. So there it is, a tab that we set there at 3.25. We know that's the center. This is a 6.5 inch line, so that would be the halfway point. All right, so when I come down here and I hit the tab key, it automatically takes me right over there. And I'll notice I selected that. So it set that format just for this particular paragraph. All right, remember, all formatting is stored with the paragraph symbol. So that is there. So if I want to set another tab down here at 3.25, I need to select this, and I need to go to the 3.25 again and set the tab. Excuse me. And now if I press the tab key, it hops right over to the center point. All right, and this is what is called a modified block style letter because the date and the closing begin at center. They are not centered. They begin at center. Everything that follows after the person's name is still at the left margin. So if you have your reference initials, you have an enclosure notation, you have an attachment, those would all still be at the left margin. So those are the basic parts of the letter. One thing I do want to point out to you is the placement. And I know in 101, it tells you to come down 2 inches, and in here it tells you about 2 inches. It should be at least a ½ inch below your letterhead where you start your date. Now, this letter looks fine, and let's just take a preview of it by going back to our print preview and looking to see what it looks like. And that looks like what I would, that looks like what I would call a balanced letter. Okay, a balanced letter means that you have about 2/3 of the letter above the center point of your paper. So that looks like it is about 2/3 and it looks like it's properly placed. However, if you have a letter that's relatively short, and let's just select this section here and we're going to delete that. So this letter is a little short. Let's go back and look at it in our print preview, and that looks a little odd. I'm sorry, scrolling it goes to the next page. So it looks a little odd because it's a little bit too high. So something that you can do for a letter like this is if we go back and we go under our layout and we go under margins and we change our margins and make them a little bit wider, that will make a difference. So we can go into custom margins and we can make our left margin 1.5 and our right margin 1.5. And then click on OK. And you notice that does make a change. Something else you can do is if you want to, you can add a little bit more space before your date. All right, and let's go back and look at that and see how this looks in the print preview. So that looks a little bit more balanced than it did the first time. So that's what you're trying to work towards, is trying to create a balance so that the letter looks, it looks nice. So changing margins, changing your starting point. They give you some rules to follow, but they're not hard and fast. You want to make sure your letter looks like it's placed properly. So I'm just going to go back and undo the things that I did. So we get back to the other letter. And here it is. So this is our letter. All right, so a couple of things, other things that I want to show you for this is there is a, okay, here it is. This little picture is not positioned properly. So if we click on it, that brings up again, we have our tools for our pictures. So we're on our picture tools. We're going to click on the format so we can look at all the tools that we have. We need to rotate this. So if we drop down the rotate and we rotate it to the right 90 degrees, that looks good. We're going to click on that so that it's the right direction. Now, another thing I want to point out to you is this. If you try to take this and move this, it really is not moving very well. That's because when Word inserts a picture, it is set up with what's called an inline format, which means that it treats it as though it were a character in your document or in your paragraph. So in order to change that, you need to change your wrapping. So we're going to make this one square wrapping. And now we know it's highlighted. So now what we can do is if we want to take it and move it, and we want to move it over here, that looks much better. And it puts it in the place where it's supposed to be. Actually, I think it goes up a little bit higher so that it's even with the top line there. Okay, and so I'm going to run out of time on this one, so we are going to, this will be part 1, and then I'm going to have a part 2 video that will have the rest of the features in it.